Don't worry, folks. Again,
Yeah,
appreciate it. I see something popped up. It says it's being streamed live on YouTube. Looks like we have it up and going now.
yeah. How about that?
Yeah, working some magic over there, John. It's a great way to
Small
get
miracle.
go.
That's right.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I think, are we good to go now? Are we live?
There you go. All right. Well, I'm ready to jump into this, Blaine. If you are,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, John, I appreciate you having me here. I know it's been a while since we've been able to sit down and do one of the eye openers, just, different things going on with the schedule and haven't been able to get together, but thanks for having me in.
yeah. Well, welcome everybody to another eye opener. This is Market Walk Daily's quick little video chats that we do with top traders. Got Blaine here with us. Blaine, great to have you. You are absolutely 100% right. There is a lot going on in the market, and great to have your perspective on all this. It's always been helpful. Your trades have been amazing. In fact, if the folks watching this missed it a couple weeks ago, there was a really great kind of impromptu presentation that we did for the Wealth Creation Alliance. Great session. And in the first couple minutes of that session, you jumped right into a trade. And I don't know if anyone's highlighted this. That trade just absolutely did incredibly well. The first trade that you shared in there was phenomenal. And we're going to go over some other stuff and some of the tools that you use to find trades like that. Um, and we're going to also share a link to that opportunity for people who are interested. If you're not already in the Wealth Creation Alliance, this will be an opportunity for you guys to get access to that. And it's a pretty great deal too. So we'll put that up in a little bit. But Blaine, thanks for jumping on with us and interested in what your take is on everything going on today. Another little dip here, but is it the dip or is it another dip?
Yeah, yeah, great question, John. It's kind of exactly what I was gonna, look to talk about today. And yeah, certainly a lot going on, certainly a lot of noise around the market with, the government shutdown continuing on, with not too much progress shown thus far. Of course, you had an election yesterday, might be a catalyst to kind of get that finally moving in the right direction, but we'll see. But, certainly been kind of on the back burner for the market, but I think it's starting to become a bit more of a market story. But all in all, definitely been a lot of choppiness in the markets. In the past week, we ripped to new all-time highs. Last week, covered a lot of ground really quickly, and certainly we're due to give some of that ground up. Of course, you're looking at your chart of the S&P 500 right here. Had several days within the last, call it five, about a week's worth of trading days. John, we had some really risk-off activity in the market. It's particularly been concentrated around the stocks that have been the high momentum names, the really high beta stocks that move a lot, kind of the high flying stocks that, have been some of the top performers year to date in the market. And actually, one thing to be watching out for, folks, is that actually several of those are reporting today. Just after hours today, we have some of the biggest names kind of in that basket of stocks. We do have Robinhood, we have AppLovin, we have DoorDash, all set to report today. So, of course, yesterday was a pretty tough day for those stocks. I mean, think of the Palantirs of the world, things like that. So, the market seemingly is getting, a little bit more, concerned about valuation and being a little bit more discerning about, some of the high valuation stocks. And, maybe too much earnings in the future have been pulled forward. So, I think that's really where you're starting to see a lot of action in the markets is, investors are starting to be a little more choosy, a little more picky about where they're looking to allocate capital. But all that has led to this pullback recently, John. Again, pulling back from the all-time highs from early last week. And what we're seeing here right now is, of course, the trend is still well intact. You can see that from the trend lines here on the chart. The S&P is still well above the 50 and 200-day moving average. They're both in a positive relationship with each other, so that's great. And all in all, we really only pulled back down to the middle Keltner channel. So I know it's we were trading above 6,900 on the S&P. It was really exciting. Covered all that ground super quick, and then we gave about half of that gain back. But again, we just pulled back down to the middle Keltner channel. It was very encouraging to see today's trading action, seeing the S&P up about 0.6%. Because, again, just like you said, John, we've had this, buy the dip mentality all year long. Pretty much every time one of these opportunities has presented itself, investors are just flocking right back to the market, buying those dips as soon as they happen. So, we traded on the middle Keltner channel. It was also a clear level of support where, the market had found resistance on several occasions before until it finally broke out in this trading day right here. So, we had that pretty significant level of resistance of, over top of the indexes, around that 67.50 level, roughly in that range. And we traded down to there. And thus far, that's current support level now has held and we're trading off of it. So we're bouncing off the middle counter channel, bouncing off of that resistance level. So that's really encouraging to see. One thing, John, is I do want to point this out because despite still having an overall very powerful trend at the index level, I think the index level, or rather the headline index, is masking a little bit of kind of what's going on under the surface. Of course, we've talked about some of the momentum names getting swept up with a lot of selling pressure lately. Amid people being a little bit more skeptical about valuations. There's other pockets of the market that are seemingly almost in full-on bear markets. If you look at certain sectors, kind of some of the consumer-facing stocks, you talk about the staples. A lot of those sectors and stocks within them are really, really having a tough time, particularly housing too. Those stocks, they had a bit of a bump earlier this year. Then rates, long-term rates really didn't come down. They've not been performing quite well. So, looking at some of the market internals, we've had some pretty narrow breadth days. Even in the past, couple of weeks when we've been breaking out to new all-time highs, the breadth across the market was really not all that great. And you can see that right here, John. This is a chart of just the percentage of S&P 500 stocks that are actually currently trading above their 200-day moving average. So particularly looking at these vertical lines here, this is what we're looking at. So you can see that, for, much of the summer and the early part of the fall rally, when the market was really performing quite well, we had great breadth. We had, between 65 and 70% on average of the S&P 500 constituents actually participating to the upside, being in longer term downtrends. You can see, though, and really just the past couple of weeks, that has fallen off pretty significantly. We're only sitting at about, 45, or excuse me, 55%. So just barely above half of the index's stocks are now participating to the upside. So we're back down to the levels that we were kind of seeing around, call it, late May to early June. So, we've seen a lot given back in the breadth. It's kind of really narrowed across the market. If you zoom into a shorter term moving average, call it the 50-day, we're actually sitting on just above about a third of the S&P 500 stocks trading above their 50-day moving averages. So we've seen a pretty significant contraction in breadth in the last couple of weeks. So that's something that we're really watching closely here as the market internals, because a lot of things are setting up seemingly for a lot of conditions seem to be ripe to have a nice run into the year end, but we would really like to see some breadth return to this market in order to have that happen.
Yeah, great to point out, if you look so close, if you got your nose to the grindstone, you're watching this every day, these drops can be really unsettling. And it's the art here, the kind of magic is to figure out is this exceptional or is it just more of the wash, rinse, repeat? And then, that's what we started the conversation with. And what you're doing here is you're helping provide some indicators that people can pay attention to get a sense of is this going to be the one that kind of changes the trend? Is this where we're hitting the top of this trend and it's going to reverse? So here are some great things to watch. That breadth is a great indicator to keep an eye on. Watching the VIX creep up a little bit too. I'm not sure if that's come up on your radar or not, but for me, that's something that I keep an eye on, and that's more of what people are anticipating the volatility will be in the coming months. It's not saying what the volatility is now. It's more of kind of their, it's a little bit more subjective than that. It's what traders are expecting, and it's based on the positions that they're taking. So, um, it's a pretty interesting number. The thing with the VIX is when it goes up, the market usually corrects. So there is a correlation there. So that's another sign to keep an eye on. And that doesn't mean we're saying, hey, this is it. We finally hit the peak of this rally and we're going to reverse. What we're saying is here are the things to watch. As you see these things get into a little bit more of the caution zone, adjust accordingly, adjust your trade positions, don't make them quite so big, use different strategies that, you're not, shooting for the moon. You're basically taking a pretty controlled approach, use the right option strategy for this type of market. And I'm going to guess, and this is just me going way out on a limb here, Blane, that's probably what you're going to talk to us about next is what kind of strategy works well for this market.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, you definitely are on to my thinking here, John. But yeah, the VIX spike, certainly we saw it move up a bit yesterday. It's pulled back and really has not gotten into a concerning range. We haven't remained above 20 in an elevated state, but certainly conditions are right to where we could have a larger pullback. We're not seeing that in the charts quite yet. Overall the trend has still not been broken at the index level. But there are certain things that we're definitely keeping an eye on. But volatility is a little raised right now. And you're exactly right. There's certain the momentum stocks. Some of the AI stocks even are having some questions raised about them now. So with that in mind, you're absolutely right. For some of those sectors, particularly this one we're looking at right here, I mean, the trend still looks great, but I'm being a little bit more strategic in the way that I'd actually look to trade this one. And so the trade idea that I actually have today, John, is for PWR. This is Quanta Services. And so this is in the industrial sector, but it's actually been trading along with the AI, pretty much the AI block for much of the past couple of years because they're an infrastructure play on the electrical grid. They're providing things with transmission, distribution of power. Obviously, that's a huge part of the narrative in the AI build out. So this is kind of really a pure play on that part of the AI story. And so you can see right here, very powerful trend for this stock. There's no question about that. It's had several, volatile days, in the past, call it month. You can see some big, moves up and down, but overall, remaining in a nice series of making higher highs and higher lows. Great trend line buy signal here. You can see there was a bit of a consolidation, but the stock, formed a nice base, gathered itself while it's consolidating, and then started to trade higher, and it's broken out to new all-time highs here over the past month, which is really encouraging, keeping that nice buy signal intact with our 21-day trading above our 63-day right there. See at current prices, the stock's trading just a touch above 450 per share, but that's still inside of that upper Keltner channel, John. So that's still offering us a really attractive entry point on this one. I'll also add, of course, we're in earnings season right now. That's something that we certainly keep an eye on. We know stock can act, a little volatile, a little chaotic around their earnings reports. This one's already gotten earnings out of the way. They reported several days ago, actually reported a really strong quarter, and have, continued to have nice price action on the back of that. So that's not a concern with this one. This one is already, past that. And so the way I was looking to play this, John, is actually with a call option debit spread, just like you said, trying to be a little bit more strategic given some of the rising volatility here in the market. And it looks like the prices have actually changed a little bit on the spread. It was actually below 8 points for the spread when I found it earlier. So I might have to call an audible here on the fly. But I landed on the December 19th option expiration date right here. But I think I might just have to change the strike that I'm looking to sell right here. So I was looking to buy to open the 400 strike call, and I'm actually going to look to sell the 420 now. So just to show you on the chart where that is, here is the 420 strike call, and I'm looking to buy the 400. So that's going to be my spread right there. So it looks like this is currently coming in at 16.5 points. So yeah, it's right about the limit, for a 20-point spread. That's the size of this one right here. So I would be comfortable go ahead and placing that trade right here for PWR. Just going to put it in right there at 16.5. Would look to, ideally get filled at 16, but, it's only 5 cent difference for a 20-point spread. Really not a, major deal to make it or break it there. So going to go ahead and just put it at the midpoint price for that spread. Looks like it just got filled right there. So great to see that. And just to show you again here, John, on the chart, again, I looked, this is the in the money call debit spread here, John. We're talking about some of the rising volatility, different pockets of the market at the index level, et cetera. With this, given it's an in the money call debit spread, as long as PWR shares are trading at or above 420 per share come option expiration, then this trade's going to be, doing quite well. It's going to be on pace to realize that full profit potential. As long as the stock's trading above that level come option expiration.
That's a great setup. It's super smart, right on point with let's look at the climate, right? What's the weather looking like before we jump in the boat and set sail, right? So we got a little bit of caution coming at us. So how do we take a smart move that lets us participate and pull income out of it? That's what we're trading for, right? We're trading to generate paycheck to make reliable income. We want to keep our losses controlled, and we want to be able to really, make sure that we're bringing money in. It's a positive gain. Interested folks in the room, if you're in, I got the chat opened up. If you want to type in there, interested to see what everybody thinks. If you think the market, if this is the top, if we're at a correction, or if this is just a blip where we're going to then loop back and pick up more. So if you want to go ahead and type in the chat, let us know what you're thinking. Be interested in where everybody else's head is at. Uh, I
For
know
sure.
it, especially in with trading when we're sitting at a desk all day long and looking at this and reading charts, and it's an isolated activity, and it's easy to get kind of stuck in your own head, and you need that outside influence. So it would be great to have everybody's input
For
and
sure. And
see
John,
what they're
another thing
thinking.
too, I know that Helene and I have done this recently. I'm not sure if you're able to see the comments from the YouTube or not, but at least here in the Zoom, I know we have, a good crowd here in the Zoom room too. We've been opening it up to, I know a lot of people like to just throw a ticker out there. Of course, this is certainly all, educational based. There's no, specific individual trade advice here. We're just simply just looking at the chart. So if you have a ticker you want to throw out, and I do some quick technical analysis on it, also super happy to do that too. I know our viewers and our TOD Live have been really enjoying that. We just kind of do use our basic technical analysis tools. So if that's something else, I know we have plenty of folks watching in, John. Happy to do that as well too.
Yeah, here's one that if you want to take a look at, Blaine, it popped up on my radar. Fastenal, FAST is the ticker.
Sure, yeah.
Um,
Let's go ahead and take a look.
Saw it starting to refill a little bit, and it was it looked pretty interesting to me. You can see it kind of making that pop back up, hoping that that thing's going to move. What I was looking at on this one is took a directional call on it, and hoping that that move is going to keep going.
Yeah, definitely. Well, for always have to kind of, keep in your perspective of what your time horizon is and kind of the lens in which you're viewing the trade. So, if you were, looking at this one here, John, for, something that was pretty oversold, which it, clearly looks like in the short term, Fastenal is very oversold. You can see that, given that it was trading below the lower counter channel here for, extended period of time. RSI wise, from the short term RSI down below, it was clearly, a little oversold to the downside. It was certainly due for, a bit of a bounce higher. Overall, looking at kind of the medium to longer term perspective, there certainly has been a trend change in the stock going back to late August. So, if you kind of zoomed out, if you were just playing for that short term bounce off of the oversold conditions, yeah, that I think, you definitely could play it to the upside for a bit of a bounce. If you're talking about, short-term options play. Now, if you're looking to kind of do more of a swing trade, more like what Helene and I typically do when we're doing our technical analysis, I would see here a pretty clear trend change in this one. I would actually be looking to potentially play this one to the downside with maybe some type of a put option trade, whether that's a, put directional, just given that we have a trend line sell signal showing up here. It has been making a series of lower lows and lower highs, or possibly even play this with a put debit spread, just depending on how much premium is baked into the Fastenal option premium. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. Again, it's always really important to remember the lens at which you're looking at it, time horizon for your trade idea, all those things.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I should have framed that too. This is definitely a short-term position for me, and it's definitely in the higher risk category of the allocation of the account. But always looking for those nice little quick grabs, and I think you have to categorize each of these trades and know what part of your portfolio you're using for this. Doug chimed in a second ago and was asking if you could repeat the dates on the trade
Oh, sure
that we
thing.
talked about.
Yeah, yeah, for my PWR trade, Doug. Again, that was the December 19th, so it's the monthly option expiration there for PWR. So December 19th. And again, I bought to open the 400 and sold to open the 420. That was the trade I just put on there live a few minutes ago.
Awesome. Yeah, Doug, thanks for chiming in and asking us. Don't ever be afraid to do that if you guys are on here. We love hearing from everybody. So great.
Absolutely.
Well, I am really excited to tune in again in just a few days. We'll see how quick we can get back on a webinar again and do this and take a look at these trades. I want to see if I'm going to fall flat on my face on this, throwing that Fastenal trade out there. You kind of were very polite and gentle and telling me, man, that did not sound smart, John. But
No,
so
no. Like I said, we definitely have looked at setups like that in the past, trying to play the oversold conditions and get a balance. Um, but yeah, it's just important, like I said, to remember, what your lens is and what you're viewing the trade. That really mean that. It wasn't trying to be too polite there. It just, it's definitely a legit way to play it. It's just, there's multiple ways to find a win in the market. So.
and
That's
I was just giving myself an off ramp and being a little bit humble there. But if it does win and it does come in big, I'm totally going to brag about it. So
Oh yeah, no, I hope to see it. I hope when we get back together, you can come in and say, "Hey, look at this triple digit winner I got here, Blane." So
yeah,
much for
right.
what you know.
Yeah, well, I can tell you the really just to give you a bit of the context into my style for these little refill trades or whatever you want to call them is, as soon as I can see that profit, I'm locking it in because a lot of times those refills are very fleeting and it can go back into that longer trend and just reverse down. If you see that gain, you gotta jump in and grab it. I'm hoping let this roll out for a day or two and see what we can how high it can go. But a lot of times I've seen a trade raw exit with a 50%, 60% gain, and it'll
Yeah,
keep going up to a three-digit gain. And it's easy to get frustrated with that. Like, man, why did I exit so early? But the truth is, you locked in a 50 to 60% gain. There is nothing wrong with that.
right.
And usually in a couple of days, man, that'll keep your bank account happy if you can do that over and over again.
Yeah, there's an old saying there, John, with the market, you never go broke making a profit. So
Yeah. Right, exactly. Well,
yeah,
cool. Well, hey, Blaine, thanks so much for carving time out today. Thanks for everybody's patience while we had some technical stuff going on at the beginning, and we'll be looking to see you guys again soon. And Blaine, you take care of yourself, all right?
yeah, you too, John. Thanks so much for having me on.